Our lands had been colonized, our bodies had been colonized. And once those two shifted and left, our minds remained colonized. We really did believe that what the West brought into our lands was better than what we had indigenously. And what we had indigenously, honestly, was powerful, was something that was truly healing inside and out. And what was replaced with was very surface level.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to another episode of Kindred Stories, where we seek knowledge and sow kindness. This episode, I'm alone. Sharil is away. Unfortunately, he's traveling. But we have a wonderful guest in the studio. And I know that we've been on a break for a few months, but we hope that with our latest guest and this episode, we can kickstart another round of episodes for Kindred Stories, where we try to bring stories from the community, personal stories of faith, and also resilience, and how our faith, Islam, guides our lives. In the studio with me today is somebody who brings with her wealth of experience, breadth of knowledge. She is a medical doctor. She's an Islamic scholar, and she is active in the community in which she serves. Dr. Rania Awaad, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Kindred Stories.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So honored to be here.
Yeah, and welcome back to Malaysia.
Thank you.
Yeah, we met, I think, last year or 2 years ago when you were in Malaysia.
That's
and you
right.
gave a talk at ISTAC. Now, Dr. Rania wears many hats, or as she calls it, many hijabs.
Hijabs, yes.
She is a clinical professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Stanford University School of Medicine. She's the director of the Stanford Muslim Mental Health and Islamic Psychology Lab. And she's also the executive director of Maristans, which is a nonprofit providing holistic mental health services to Muslim community. Apart from being a medical doctor, she's also educated in the traditional knowledge of Islam. She has ijazah or certifications in Quranic recitation, Islamic law in Damascus. Dr. Rania, maybe before we delve into the topic that we want to discuss today, which is mental health and mental health from the perspective of Islam, maybe you share with us a little bit about your background. You have a very broad background. You were educated in the tradition. You were educated as a medical doctor. How has your education, your upbringing, helped you in framing your thoughts about mental health in the Muslim world?
Oh yeah, no, thank you for such a lovely introduction. And also, yes, it's been a journey, is what I can say. I don't think I didn't plan it to be quite like this. It was really my Islamic training and studies were really a very personal journey at the very beginning. I grew up in the United States, and as a kid who grew up in America, I've always wanted and yearned to seek out the Islamic tradition, and for that had to travel abroad to do so. My time spent in Syria was really for my own personal studies. I didn't imagine I would become an ustada, a sheikha. This was not really in the plans necessarily. But when I returned to the US, I found there was quite a need in our communities there, both for a woman scholarly voice, but also for just counseling. And that's really where the journey for mental health began for me. It was working in the community, teaching in the community, being an ustada to many. But then people would bring their personal questions. I didn't quite expect that. I was trained in the books. I could answer the yes, the no, the halal, the haram, right? The basic understanding of Islam. But when people brought their personal concerns, family issues, marital issues, just interpersonal issues, I realized I was out of my depth. I knew I wanted to become a physician, had been planning for this all along, parallel to my Islamic training, but thought I was going to do something totally different. Women's health is where I was going. And it was at the very last moment that I switched into psychiatry because of the needs that were in the community. And that's what started my own personal journey with Islam and mental health.
Dr. Rania, we seldom hear about mental health from an Islamic perspective.
Mm.
That's what you've been working on in your career. That's what
Yes.
you've dedicated your life to.
Mm.
And you've spoken a lot about this tradition in Islam, an Islamic tradition of the Maristan,
Mm.
of the holistic
Mm.
hospitals or clinics that used to exist,
Yes.
and that faith played an important role
Yes.
in treating not just the body but also the mind. Why do you think over the years this tradition was lost? There was not enough of a focus on not just the spiritual, the ritualistic aspect of Islam, but Islam as something that could also treat the mental health of
And it
followers.
did. And it did. This is the most amazing thing to me. I guess I'll start answering your question from my own journey.
Sure.
Because in my own journey, I entered this field of psychiatry very suspicious of it.
Mm.
And the reason I was very suspicious of it is because we only heard of mental health and psychology from a Western perspective, a very Eurocentric perspective. Freud is all you would hear. That's all I really knew coming into the field. And I felt like this isn't for me. It has nothing to do with me and my faith and my community.
Yeah.
And it just led to a lot of searching. What is the connection? A lot of literature, a lot of pulling from the traditional sources, only to come to realize Islam had an incredibly rich tradition related to the healing of the mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. It was all very integrated. And the healing centers, the Maristans, also were very integrated in all aspects of healing, mind, body, and soul. Now, why did we lose such a tradition? There's so many reasons we can point out. I always like to point inward before I point outward and point the finger at anyone else. We ourselves started to lose our own traditions when we started to believe here in the East that West is best, that somehow they have better than what we have. It's true. I'm going to say something that's a little edgy here, if that's okay. It's true. Our lands had been colonized. Our bodies had been colonized. And once those two shifted and left, our minds remained colonized. We really did believe that what the West brought into our lands was better than what we had indigenously. And what we had indigenously, honestly, was powerful, was something that was truly healing inside and out. And what was replaced with was very surface level. Cognition, behavior, both are fine, Islamically speaking, but there was definitely a loss of the soul. In fact, today we say about modern Western psychology that it is soulless.
Yeah.
It has lost connection to the soul.
Dr. Rania, maybe for the benefit of our listeners, Kindred listeners, many of them would not be familiar with psychiatry, with psychology. Maybe you could explain the difference between the traditional, the mainstream Western approach to
Yes.
mental health,
Sure.
and more Islamic faith congruent mental health approach. What's the difference?
What is the difference?
Yeah, what is the difference?
There are many overlaps, but there are some very key differences. In modern Western psychology, as you might kind of imagine, there's such a focus today on the neurosciences, right? The brain sciences.
How the brain is wired and all that.
Such a focus here. And it's important, but almost to the exclusion of other aspects of the human psyche. So they focus on cognition and on behavior. So even if you think about famous therapies that we're familiar with, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, these are the kind of main things that are paid attention to today. Empirical sciences, meaning something I can reproduce in the lab, I can do many studies on and get the same results. Rational sciences, that I can logically deduct what is the aspects. This is really where the focus is today. We take all of this in Islamic psychology, but in addition, we have some other sources that are very important, and those are scriptural sources, the Quran, the Sunnah. And what is the difference there is that in addition to behavior and to cognition, you also have the heart, the metaphysical heart, the one that connects you to your Lord, your Creator, and the soul, the concept of the ruh. These two aspects are largely missing in Western psychology today. You don't study about them anymore. You don't hear about them. The theory is, if you can't touch it, reproduce it, or look at it under an MRI machine, it doesn't exist. But it does, because if I ask the average person, do you have a soul? They'd say, yes, of course I do. But we just don't study this in psychology anymore.
And the promoters of Western, the Western view of psychology and psychiatry, and cognitive science, are they dismissive of the approach that you bring?
Very interestingly, I'm finding when I was first in training, I would say absolutely.
Yeah, I would think
Absolutely.
so.
There was really no room for discussion on religion, spiritual aspects, and maybe just a little tad on cultural, what they called cultural psychiatry. Let's bring in some of the cultural elements.
Yeah.
Today, though, these many years later, I have found that the field is actually coming back almost full circle, saying things like, we actually need to bring all the identities to the table. Whole person care. Well, how do you do whole person care if for some people who are faith-centered, God-centered people such as ourselves, you must bring that into the discussion. If your coping mechanisms are spiritual, then, and you tell me this is in the literature, they call it checking God at the door, meaning before you go into the therapy room, you leave God at the door. A'udhu billah. But this is the concept, right?
Yeah.
That I cannot even speak about this because it's such a secular space.
Yes.
Now we're coming almost full circle with people saying, bring all these elements in if it's part of your healing process.
Yeah.
So the field is changing.
Maybe just back to the granular side of treatment again. I'm just trying to get a sense. So if somebody is showing symptoms of depression,
Yes.
Suicide ideation, they go and see a psychiatrist, diagnosed, and then there probably is some pharmacological intervention. They're given.
There could be, yes.
There could be.
Yes.
And they're given prescription drugs. They could be given prescription drugs. But if they go to see faith congruent psychiatrists such as yourself,
Yes.
how would that differ?
How does that look?
Yeah.
Yes. Because we take all the other elements, there's no issue in taking the discussion on pharmacology if needed.
Yeah.
Talk therapy if needed. In fact, I would say very importantly, the concept of the Maristans had both of these in them. They had pharmacies literally on site compounding medications taken by mouth. Because the early Muslims understood there's no harm in this. In fact, if anything, if it's meant to aid you and help you, then you should take this. Talk therapy, turns out in our research we're finding, the Muslims, maybe they didn't create talk therapy, but they were major proponents of the concept of talk therapy and developed many forms of talk therapy. So these two, which are offered today in the modern psychologist or psychiatrist toolbox, are still very much in line with Islamic trainings and of a faith congruent therapist or psychologist or psychiatrist. So then what's in addition? Then we bring in the soul-centered care, heart-centered care. That's largely missing. And this is where you see what I call an alignment back to the fitrah, that primordial essence that God created us with, bringing people back to this space. My role as an Islamic psychologist isn't just to reduce your symptoms. If you come to me or anyone comes to me with depression, the typical psychiatrist or psychologist is interested in symptom reduction. I want to reduce your depressive symptoms, your anxiety symptoms, your whatever it may be symptoms. And if I've done that, then I check off the box and I say our treatment is successful. However, in Islamic psychology, that's simply not enough. The fact that you're out in the world a little less depressed isn't quite what we're looking for. We're looking for you to have, yes, symptom reduction, but in addition, that your alignment back to the purpose, your purpose in life here. What are you doing in this dunya? And where are you headed in the akhirah? What's your final destination going to be? That largely is completely missing from modern psychology.
And how do you do that? What are the tools to help somebody come back to the fitrah?
Yes, and they are tools. We've developed actually a modality of treatment. It's called TIIP, Traditionally Islamically Integrated Psychotherapy. And in the TIIP model, there is a process, there's multiple tools and techniques in which you do so, some of which are based on things that you may be familiar with. So character traits that a person may have that are flawed, and we're working on them. There's heart-based purification that needs to happen as well. So for example, today, the very common thing people say is narcissism. They talk a lot about narcissism. But Islamically, what is narcissism? Like in the DSM, right, which is the manual we diagnose, psychologists, psychiatrists use to diagnose, they'll say that this is a personality disorder.
Yeah.
From an Islamic perspective, we say yes, and there is a portion here of character flaw. For example, their arrogance. The root of narcissism is arrogance. If we do purification around this topic, a person may be able to shift from a narcissistic personality and help cure this.
Allah. And one of the great initiatives that you've done through Maristan is training of imams.
Yes.
Because, of course, when you have mental health issues, you should seek a psychiatrist or psychologist, but
Yes.
not many people have access to this
Mm.
for whatever reason.
Mm.
And for many people, their first port of call is a community leader.
Yes.
And in
true.
the Muslim community, more often than not, is the imam.
Yes. Our research continues to show this. Yes.
And I don't know if many imams who are traditionally trained are equipped with the tools that you mentioned earlier, because people will come to imams with all sorts of problems. They're not just asking the halal and haram. So, imam, I've got problems, marriage, I've got personal problems, I'm feeling anxious, I've got debt. How have you trained these imams as the first responder, so to speak, for mental health in the community?
We call them the Carls, meaning community and religious leaders, because they are the frontline responders of the Muslim communities. The imams, and think about in America, we also have youth directors, our Sunday school teachers. We have these different forms of individuals who are really on the front line response of the community. People go to them with their issues, but you're right, they're completely out of their depth. I know, I was once there.
Sure. Completely
out of their depths in terms of, I don't have any training in marriage therapy. When you bring me your teenager who's addicted to something, I don't have any training in addiction medicine. How do I do this? So we've formed these trainings offered through Maristan, some of which are heavy lifting. So heavy topics. And I'm going to give a trigger warning here because, for example, the topic of suicide. People come to the imams either before feeling suicidal, or even they now have to deal with a death by suicide in the community. How do you help the whole community grieve after such a difficult kind of death? So we do these trainings where we go through certification trainings, and they are full day trainings in which you have to then, for example, the suicide one has, let's introduce you to the Sharia concept. So we've married the Islamic rulings, all the legal Islamic rulings, and married it to all the psychiatric medical understandings of the topic of suicide. 100-page research manual.
Interesting. That
was developed by my lab, the Stanford Muslim Mental Health and Islamic Psychology Lab. Then I learned you can't quite give an imam 100 pages and say, do something. Mashallah. So then we developed the next stage, and this is where Maristan comes in, where they then took this very research-heavy manual and translated it into training modules. So now this is the full-day certification training. In the United States, we've been able to train over 600 imams, mashallah. So we have this. We had a goal of 500. Now we've reached that. We're now in the next goal of 1,000 onwards. And so we hope then they have the tools to recognize the red flags, to know when to refer to mental health professionals, when they can intervene and when they need to refer. And if a death by suicide happens in their community, how do you pick up? We created a blueprint of the models of how do you help a community grieve? How do you help the family grieve? What do you do in terms of the last rites of the Muslim, such as the prayer, the janazah, the burial, and the counseling that needs to happen?
And how has you've trained 600 now? What has the outcome been like in the community? Have you heard good feedback based on the
Yes, and
training?
not just heard feedback. We actually do research on this since it's the lab doing this. They do pre and post testing, 6-month follow-up. And from that group, we're also recruiting some of the imams to become trainers, train the trainers model.
Fantastic.
Because every one of these trainings, you're paired with a psychiatrist. So far, it's been myself and a religious leader training together, the group. And so that way, the Sharia aspects can be answered and the psychiatric mental health aspects can be answered in this training. And so we've just now are starting to launch what we call the Training Academy, to have these individuals, some of whom to come back and actually become trainers and scale the training further out.
And have the demographically have the younger imams been more receptive, or are you finding that
I'm finding
the
younger
older
and
imams
older. I've seen some of the most incredible things in my trainings. One time we were in a community. It was a largely ethnic community that was even English was hard for them. They only spoke their language, for example, and it was a hard sell. But however, they came, but they were almost like uncertain in that first hour. I could see they were, and see when somebody's eyes are kind of glazed over, they're not really
sure.
But within that first hour, one of the imams came to me in the first break that we took and said it was like a light bulb moment and said, I didn't know what I didn't know. I've been an imam for 30 years and I cannot believe that maybe I've been doing this all wrong. And then you could just see and mashallah, it took a lot of humility to say something like that. But also you could see how much they were appreciative of this work. So I have largely had excellent experience with all of the imams because the first hour is really Quran and Sunnah. It's everything that they are familiar with. But sometimes we don't fully connect the dots.
Sure.
And you can see the light bulb go off and go, oh, that's right. And the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is a communal effort of needing to make sure we all save lives.
Yeah.
Because the Quran says, whoever saves a life, it's as though you've saved all of humanity.
That's right.
And as soon as they hear the verse, they go, that's right. It is our farz kifaya. It's our communal obligation to do so. And it just changes the dialogue completely.
And just finally on this topic of training these imams, are there any plans to bring this around the world?
I hope so, inshallah. I was just at one of the universities here in Malaysia yesterday, and I was speaking about this, and they said, please, let's bring this. And I said, okay, let's do it, inshallah. So I hope so.
Inshallah.
Yes.
We'll take a quick break and we'll come back after this. Welcome back to this episode of Kindred Stories with Dr. Rania Awaad. We've been talking about Islam and mental health. If you haven't yet listened and watched Dr. Rania's lecture on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and adversity and mental health, please do. This is a masterclass in Islam and mental health. We'll put the link in the show notes. I mean I keep on watching that.
Really?
Absolutely.
Mashallah.
Because
I'm so honored.
Yeah, I going through periods of adversity myself. I always watch your lecture about our Prophet and his year of adversity.
Yes.
When he lost his wife, he lost his uncle.
Yes.
He was expelled. There was tariffs.
Humiliated.
There was a blockade. He was Taif. What happened in Taif?
Yes.
Humiliated.
Yes.
And that is a source of strength for me.
Inshallah.
Dr. Rania, is there a stigma about mental health issues in the Muslim community? And if so, why is there a stigma? Is it because we see this as something, a sign of weakness? And you know, I don't know how to phrase this, but every time the issue of mental health is brought up, people will say, deal with it, you know, go back and pray more.
Yes.
And praying more, of course, is part of your tools as well, part of how you deal with faith congruent mental health interventions. But is it because we just don't have that tradition of recognizing mental health issues as important in the Islamic world?
Currently, yes. Historically, this wasn't the case at all. And that's my surprise in some of the research and the writings I've been doing recently because, and I'll answer the question in a moment, but just because when we saw, for example, the Maristans, the newest book that we were writing, it can't be that this has always been the case. The stigma has always been the case in the Muslim world. Because then how do you explain that the Muslim civilization was the first civilization in human history to bring mental health and psychiatric care, medicalize it, and put it into their hospital systems, the Maristans? Yeah. It can't be that that's the case if there was stigma. So clearly there was much more acceptability. Now, what happens is that over time, we lose some of this tradition, and the biases that kind of entered into our own land came to us as well, and really had us isolate and think about emotional and mental health issues as being spiritual conditions. But that's simply not accurate. When you look at what causes mental health conditions, we say they are multifactorial. It could be spiritual. Somebody can go through an existential crisis. It could be spiritual, but it could also be genetic, biological, environmental, social. There's so many reasons why a person may develop a mental health condition. So that means if I say to somebody, go pray and pray more, and they're already not functioning at basic, but let's say it's clinical depression. They're not even getting out of bed. They're not even brushing their teeth. They're not even brushing their hair. And I say to them, not just pray, they're not even doing this because they're just not doing anything. They're not functioning. And I say to them, pray more. It's like telling somebody with a broken leg who's on crutches, go run.
Go run.
How?
Yeah.
How? It's not even appropriate. Yet why do we do this? It's because we're isolating all the different factors that could be mental health into just one. But what if their issue isn't a spiritual existential crisis? What if their issue is hormonal or genetics? The example I typically give on this is postpartum depression. 1 in 5 women around the world will experience depression in the period after delivery of a baby. Culturally, religiously, spiritually, what do we tend to do to women? We shame them. We say to them, Allah just gave you a new baby child, and so many can't have children, and how dare you be upset and cry, and what is, we really shame her and really lay it on thick.
Yeah.
And in reality, if you look at the reason behind postpartum depression, it's almost always hormonal. There's a deep and quick shift in hormones that happens completely biologically, not connected to her spiritual state or her social state usually. And so when you think about how are we then, it's not scientifically sound, it's not spiritually sound, it's not religiously sound, yet we do this all the time. So it's a lack of education, a lack of information, and also a lack of, I would say, humility to really understand that there are multiple reasons why, and we need to pause and figure out, well, which of them is it so we can truly help the person in front of us.
Do you also find that sometimes Muslims don't seek help when they're confronted with mental health issues because of the potential shame in admitting sin, for instance? People who have addiction issues, for instance, because they know that they've done something wrong and something that that Islam prohibits. And if I'm going to seek help, I'm going to have to admit to this, and I don't want to deal with that, and therefore I'm just going to, not seek help.
Yes, very common, and that's normative, as in to say that is what is expected in human behavior when someone does something where they realize it wasn't appropriate to withhold. However, what are the best teaching tools we have? It's the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the best of the generations and people were his companions. But amongst his companions, there were addicts. People don't realize, just like there were Sahaba who died by suicide. People are always shocked when I say these things. It's also a lack of us studying the Sira, the tradition, understanding the stories that we are meant to learn from. So what about this addiction? Because alcohol hadn't been, I'll use the example of alcohol first, because it hadn't been abolished initially in Islam, the Quraysh drank. Yes, the people of the time drank. Slowly, the rules and commandments came down to slowly but surely abolish alcohol and make it something that is impermissible. But there were still amongst the Sahaba people who were drinking too much. You would call them alcoholics, yes? And couldn't quite kick the habit. And then wanted to come to the prayer space drunk. And other Sahaba, again, normative human behavior is to say, get out of here. Don't come here. You're drunk, right? And this came to the Prophet ﷺ, and his response was beautiful about one particular Sahaba that the other Sahaba started to complain about and go to the Prophet and say, we don't want him in our midst. He said, leave him. Leave him. He loves Allah and he loves the Prophet ﷺ, and his love for us will eventually help him kick this. And because the Prophet ﷺ made space for him, he didn't say and ostracize him and shame him and push him out of, which so many addicts feel that they're pushed out of the community. They can't show face in the community. But the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ specifically made space for him and knew that it was going to take some time. Then we learn about this particular Sahaba, that love and that acceptance and that bringing him into the community eventually helped him kick the habit. And he was able to actually get rid of his alcoholism, right? We know his story, because of that love. And he says, if it was not for the love of the Prophet ﷺ that allowed me to have the strength to do this, I would have run away and never actually showed face again.
And is this also part of the training of the imams? Because,
Yes.
I don't want to generalize, but there is a tendency to view some of our religious community leaders as people who would ostracize, as people who would dismiss and be very quick to judge. Not all, some do that, and we've seen this. But is this also part of the training for the imams?
Yes, it's the light bulb moments. It's also, I have found, and may Allah allow us to continue to have this kind of wisdom, inshallah, and learn it from our tradition, that sometimes there's a lot of cultural elements that come into our Islamic teachings that are not really from Islam. To really follow the tradition and the rulings as they meant to be, we have to get rid of some of these other cultural stigmas and issues that are sometimes confound the story.
Yeah. Dr. Rania, I wanted to maybe shift the conversation to what everyone, or all Muslims, can do on a daily basis to look after their mental well-being.
Sure.
And this is not for people who are facing acute mental health issues who require intervention. This is just your normal maintenance and upkeep to make sure that you don't fall into a mental health crisis. What are some of the tools that maybe you could share with for Muslims in our daily lives to make sure that we're not overwhelmed, to make sure that we're not burnt out, to make sure that we're not anxious, to make sure that we're well grounded and that we are centered on our fitrah, as you said.
Yes.
Are there things that we could practice, mindfulness exercises that we can practice, which is consistent with our faith and our rituals?
It's interesting you said mindfulness. Our newest book, inshallah, that we've signed now to write the next, just from one book to another, mashallah, but it's needed, is actually going to be on indigenous Islamic practices of contemplative meditation. I move away from the concept of mindfulness. It's a beautiful concept. It's well researched in the literature. It's become evidence-based. It does come from Buddhist roots that are secularized at this time in the field. And many Muslims feel a little bit hesitant about things that may not come directly from within their tradition. And so we're looking at, and you mentioned, what are the tools that the average person can use for average everyday issues? Yes. And I would say one of them is, in fact, contemplative meditation, tafakkur. Tafakkur, and we've done an entire series just this past Ramadan on Maristans. It's on our YouTube. Just breaking it down over a span of about, I think it's 10 episodes, really breaking down what is tafakkur and how do you do this contemplative meditation. I'll tell you, with everything happening globally in the world, everything happening even at home and at work and in life, the only way I've been able to keep my sanity over these last couple of years has been pausing and taking time alone. Not isolating from the whole world, but I take this, and I hope others will take benefit from this as well. I look directly at the Prophet ﷺ as our best teacher and guide and example. Even before Islam, we know the story. He would go up to Ghar Hira, the cave, and he would meditate there for a period of time, because things would get very heavy around him. And in order to refuel, to recharge, you do need to pause. And you need to be away from work, life, noise, fanfare, right? It needs to happen. Otherwise, you just keep on eventually running on empty. And you can't pour from an empty cup. And so even after Islam, he would do this as well in his own i'tikaf space. And people think of i'tikaf as Ramadan only, but it turns out he actually would do this on a daily basis, between Maghrib and Isha, between, after Fajr for a little while, even short periods of time. He would do this on a weekly basis, Thursday night into Friday, for example. He would do this on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis. So I think we need this practice again. You see it very commonly today.
Yeah. How I'm trying to imagine how that integrates into our daily life.
Yes,
because
busy life.
Not all of us have a cave.
Nope.
We've got kids running, or we've got our phones going off. And I have to admit, Dr. Rania, that i'tikaf is a fantastic concept, this spiritual retreat. And
spiritual
of course,
retreat, yes.
we associate it with the last few days in Ramadan, where you go into the masjid and you're really contemplatively meditating and feeling at one with God. But to integrate that on a daily basis is so challenging.
Maybe.
Even sometimes I feel guilty, and I'm going to admit this on this podcast, that I'm rushing through my prayers. The quality of my salat is bad. If I was to grade some of the quality of my salat, it'd be F, because I'm just doing it just to tick it off, and I have to admit this. Allah will know,
and most people like yourself, mashallah.
And so maybe you could help me try to figure out how is it I can improve the quality of my salat, and also to introduce these moments of iktikaf in my daily life.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I'tikaf for men is usually in the masjid. And I just have to add this one thing, if I may. And for women, it can be done at the masjid or at home. And I just want to say that because there's a very special ruling here. Kind of like in the Jummah prayers, the woman may just pray home, right? Similar idea here with i'tikaf. So for the woman, it's a little easier to do this. And I personally do this, honestly, at home. I have my prayer rug. A section of my room in my bedroom is my i'tikaf corner. And my kids know, because they don't break my i'tikaf by coming in and out of it. In fact, in any i'tikaf, you can even speak to people, right? If you need to drink from your water bottle, this is all fine. It's not like prayer where you cannot talk to anybody and drink or eat or so on. But I go into that space and my kids know, because you say your intention before you go in, and then I hear them whisper to each other, "Mama's going into i'tikaf." But they got so used to it because it happens on a daily basis, just for a short little while. I need it daily. But what do men do if they can't get to the masjid all the time? Because for them it needs the masjid. You do khalwa. Khalwa does not require the masjid. It's the same concept, spiritual seclusion, but it can happen as you walk in nature. It can happen as you take a walk outside, you find a tree. The Prophet would do this too. He would sit under the tree for a little while and meditate. Sometimes it's just moments.
Wonderful.
Moments.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need a cave. It could really be anywhere. It could be the corner of this room. But it's sort of just I need some space and time. I need to refuel again. Kind of like we all know with our cars, with gas, right? We know when the light goes off, we know how many miles are left before you have to refuel. Or the fancy people with electric cars, they know they have to plug in. Yes.
Yeah. And when you're refueling, everyone has their personal direct connection in that moment with God. But is there best practice to this? Is there, is there some zikr that is better than another one?
There's so many forms. This is what we covered actually in the YouTube series.
Yeah.
And the reason we did this and we're writing this book is because we're showing everyone's going to have a different way. Some people, it is dhikr, actually. Tadakkur is part of their aspect. For other people, it's actually tadabbur. They're thinking about the verses of the Quran, for example. For other people, they're going through what I call the M's. This comes from Imam Ghazali, where he says muhasaba, accountability, muraqaba, kind of self-monitoring, right? You're doing, and there's mujahada, there's basically all the M's. I can go through them. However, we cover this actually in the book, and it's something in which you, whatever speaks to you, you may do. And for different people, it'll be different things.
Yeah.
But the point is to make that time. I say it's like exercise. If I wasn't disciplined enough to get to the gym or to get on my whatever exercise machine I have in my home, or any other just exercises in my home, even without a machine, it's not going to happen unless it's carved into the day.
Yeah. I think that's a wonderful way of looking at it. Carve it into your day, make time for it, be well intentioned about it, and I think that quality increases. I hope to practice this because I really want to increase the quality of my, not just salat, but the presence and my quality of my time with Allah, through dua, through salat, and not rush through it.
Yes.
And I don't want to be saddled with this guilt where my quality seemingly increases when I'm going through tribulation.
Yes.
That that I'm really in the moment because I'm asking Allah, please solve my problems.
Yes.
And then when good times come, it's
And that's exactly how the verse Allah describes us in the Quran. There's literally a verse in the Quran that says that when we're in need, we beg Allah, and as soon as that passes, we're mindless. However, and that's, I have to say, the fact that Allah describes that is literally, it's so much psychology in the Quran.
Yeah. Allah knows that
He knows what He created.
This is a human psychology.
This is human behavior. I know what I created. So part of it is not to guilt us and shame us. It's literally to say, I know what I created. And then He gives you the antidote, the solution, right? And the solution is the pauses so that we're more conscious, intentional about what we're doing, the presence that needs to be there.
Dr. Rania, I want to bring the conversation now to some contemporary challenges that not just Muslims but everyone faces. One is, of course, devices, being connected all the time. This has now been proven to be detrimental to some for some developmental aspects
Yes.
of the human brain. How would you and how would Islam treat this phenomena of being ultra connected, validation through social media, and what are the steps in which we can mitigate some of the impact on especially our young children?
Yes, we've written about this as well. And the reason for it is we get this question very often. And it's reality. Everything is on my phone. For example, I'm traveling right now. So everything is on my phone. And not just my social media, but whether I need my access to my calendar or my camera or my email or everything's right there. So to say to people, put this away, don't use this, is really not realistic. And to guilt trip people about it is also not useful. But I think where it comes is the modulating, is putting certain checks in place. Some people are very disciplined as it is. They don't really need this. But other people, I say download the app in which it literally will shut off on you after a period of scrolling. Sometimes we doom scroll. We just end up, or sometimes now they call it revenge scrolling, which I think is really interesting. And so if you are prone to this, and that we all know ourselves, in fact, our phones tell us how much time we spent in each thing.
Yeah.
Yes,
I don't want to look at that.
How much we spent. So if you know this about ourselves, again, it comes to the discipline. And the Muslim is very disciplined. Yes, the prayers make us very disciplined. So this is a form of discipline too. It's knowing if you need this to sort of shut off, or the internet, including for children, to just sort of shut off at a certain time, then let's do so. They acclimate and they get used to this. They grumble at first and they get annoyed with us at first. And then we say, there's also all the filtering and mechanisms. We have this for our children as well. The different apps, and there's so many different forms of them. I don't represent any one of them. But the point is, it blocks certain things. And one might say, well, should I be the overbearing mom or father, mother or father that does that? And I say yes, because at this age, they don't know yet or can control yet. And we know that even as young as 5, they're seeing things there that they can't unsee once they see. And it may become addictive to them.
Yeah.
So yes, we have to put these measures in place.
One is the consumption of stuff online, the digital consumption. The other is your digital presence. So you're not just consuming, but you're also there.
Yes.
You're commenting, you're posting stuff and all that. What is the correct Islamic etiquette for your presence online? This is not spoken of enough. We always speak about what the do's and don'ts in our physical world.
True.
Interaction in the physical world. But sometimes online, shaitan takes over and you become someone completely different. Is there
the
etiquette?
keyboard warriors?
Yeah,
Yes. I would say it's actually not very different than in the physical world, to be very honest. To me, I always think to myself, what I'm about to say, because what you write and put out into the world is not going away. Yeah. Someone will screenshot it. It is always there. It doesn't go away even if you try to delete.
But sometimes because of the anonymity, you're just unfiltered and
the anonymity
carried away.
Especially.
Yeah.
These are the trolls, yes?
Yeah.
They're usually anonymous. And then we think to ourselves, where's your courage to show who you are and what you're saying? So not paying attention to the trolls is the most important thing. I know it's much easier said than done. I know. At the same time, it's 2 things. One is the not engaging. What is the saying where they say kings don't swat flies? And the second is that this is a spiritual teaching that I learned from my own spiritual teachers. If there is criticism, something negative said, and you're so offended and shocked at it, and what is this? They say, it may be wrong. It may be completely wrong. But sometimes there's a kernel of truth in every criticism about you. So take the hikmah, take the wisdom, benefit from it, even put it in your back pocket if you need to revisit later. But there may be something there to pay attention to. And then to think, what do I need to revise or, fix or do for myself?
Yeah, I'm frequently the target of criticism and trolling. It's I think par for the course for people who are in the public eye. It is difficult to deal with sometimes because it gets quite personal.
You're only human,
and of course we're only human. There's only so much that you can block out and filter. I wish. I mean, this is not just for Muslims, but also for anybody who's online. That their online presence or their digital presence is as measured as they are in real life, because I
Yes.
know that
They
it
wouldn't.
isn't.
No, they wouldn't. In fact, I think to myself, would this person show their face and say this?
Yeah, they won't.
When you're on social media, when you're behind the anonymous nature of the digital world, you can literally hold a megaphone and it's like you're screaming, blaring. But who are you actually? What are your credentials? Who gives you the right to even say these things or the permission to say such things?
Yeah.
Do you have the right to say that? And most of the time, the answer is no. Had they been courageous, they would have used their real names.
Dr. Rania, we're living through perhaps one of the most psychologically scarring moments
Yes, we are.
in our lifetime.
This is true.
There is a collective anguish and despair, especially in the Muslim world.
Yes.
But it's not just contained to the Muslim world. I must say, what is happening in Gaza and in other parts of the Middle East is causing tremendous moral crisis, not just in the Muslim world, but for others who believe in justice. But just specifically on the Muslim world, we are there will be a generation growing up with this sense of despair, sense of helplessness, anger, even with what's happened. And as a psychiatrist, you treat individuals. But are there any lessons so that we can collectively make sure that this generation of Muslims growing up, seeing the genocide, seeing the ethnic cleansing that's taking place today, that the trauma is somewhat reduced over time?
And what a difficult question this is. And you're right, it's not just individual trauma, it's collective trauma as well. The week before I came here, I was in Bosnia. And in Bosnia, they just had their 30-year anniversary of the Bosnian genocide. I share this, and I'm sharing this now with all vulnerability, to be honest with you, because the issue of trauma, sometimes you don't realize how deep it's seated in you. We went to the site of the genocide. There's a museum commemorating and explaining what happened. And then there's the grave site that has white pillars, a sea of white pillars, not almost 9,000. It's just massive, of all the people that died in this genocide, the Bosnian genocide in the 90s. In that particular city only, not all the people, just there. And they had asked me to prepare a lecture on trauma, to speak on individual, collective trauma, such as your question. And I had it all prepared on my iPad. And I was there and I sat there and I couldn't speak. The words are on my screen, but I couldn't formulate them. I was so overwhelmed emotionally. I've never not given a lecture when I've been asked to give a lecture, especially on mental health or any lecture for that matter. But I couldn't speak and they all looked at me. There was a whole, a group of people. They're all looking at me expectantly. And I just said, I can't even formulate the words, because all I could see, even though these are people that are now buried, may Allah have mercy on their souls, under the ground, all I could see was Gaza. That's all I could see. The people that are above the ground still dealing with this kind of oppression and genocide and ethnic cleansing and all the things that are happening. And I just couldn't formulate the words. And I apologized and I said, all I can seem to muster in my limited human capacity right now is dua. So we raised our hands and we did a dua al-Nasri, which is a dua of oppression. We read it together for the people under the ground and the people above the ground. And all the people oppressed across this ummah and across the world, across humanity. And I think I'm sharing this story with vulnerability like this, because I don't have to out myself that I wasn't able to give this lecture. And just, it made me really reflect on what does it mean? How much trauma are we actually carrying? It wasn't until I was there that it sort of really showed itself. You know what I mean? Like, I was so overwhelmed. And we're carrying this every day with us. And there is such a thing as intergenerational trauma, where this will carry. It literally changes the DNA as we pass on from one generation to another, the traumas we're experiencing. So this is for the long run.
Yeah.
The horrific things we're seeing, the horrific things that show up on our social media scrolls, you can't unsee some of the things you've seen. Yes. So we will be carrying this, but your question was, how do you move forward? And I think part of the moving forward is really, I'll say this word and people don't like it, self-care. I think when I say self-care, people think I'm saying selfish, but it's not selfish to have self-care. In that moment, I had to have self-care. I literally apologized to a massive crowd of people and said, I'm very sorry. I need to go take care of myself in this moment. And that was for me dua. Like I just needed a place of spiritual connection. And then I needed to isolate for a bit and recompose myself to be able to carry on. We need to turn back spiritually and add this into our life. As in to say, I met some of the survivors of Gaza, a psychologist recently that I met as I was traveling to a psychology conference. Without going through her whole story, I'll share this much. This woman was pulled out of the rubble twice. Not once, twice. Her entire family's gone. Everybody. She's the only survivor. And with tears, she's saying, why didn't Allah take me too? Not because she is sad. They thought she was crying for the people who died. She was crying why she wasn't given martyrdom. Imagine this strength and resilience. And I learned the most incredible lesson from her. She said to me, Rania, we don't need people across the world just making dua for Gaza. That is the bare minimum. Where are the 2 rak'ahs that people should be praying every night for Gaza? Is our ummah actually praying at the bare minimum level? And I said, I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not sure. Tell them. Okay, I will. All right. The next thing she said was, and we don't need our prayers as much as what we need is your advocacy. And I said, how? And she said, well, everybody has their own way of doing this. How do you solve trauma? How do you start to heal? How do we in psychology treat trauma? Some of this is channeling some of that grief and anguish into something productive. And each person does this in their own way. Some people, it's spiritual. All they can do in that moment, like my moment in Bosnia, all I could do was dua. But other people have a microphone and they should speak. Other people are excellent writers. They should write. Some are content creators. They should create. Some are poets. They should write in poetry. Some are artists. They should do artwork. Some are advocates. Some are lawyers, attorney, policymakers. Right? Everyone has a different capacity that Allah has given them. And some are healthcare workers. They should go and take care in that way, in whatever capacity and knowledge that Allah has given them. Because that is what we'll be asked about. What He's given us specifically will be asked about.
That's fantastic about turning the advocacy as part of your self-care as well. It's not just the dua, but the advocacy helps. And I know this personally because on days when the news is just too overwhelming from Gaza, of course, dua, of course, asking Allah to protect our brothers and sisters in Gaza. But Doctor, I'm going to ask something a bit more, something maybe a bit controversial. It's not just the trauma, it's not just the anguish, but it's also come to a stage where for some young people, they're questioning faith as well.
Yes.
Why would Allah allow this to happen?
True.
I mean, there's no gray area here. For us, this is genocide. This is ethnic cleansing on a daily basis that's been allowed with impunity. How would you answer that if somebody comes to Dr. Rania? I've got crisis of faith right now because I don't know why Allah would allow this. Of course, there is good and there is bad in the world, but this is completely disproportionate and unfair.
And it's very common, actually. I want to normalize this too, that it's not just 1 or 2 people, but it's almost expected that somebody would ask, why is this happening? And the reality is, if someone were to come to me, my answer typically is, I don't know. However, what I do know and what I can share with you is that I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in His divine wisdom and planning. Why did He do this? I don't know. But there is something in His divine wisdom and plan that I trust. And I also trust in knowing Allah's names, right? His 99 and more names, of them, I know he is al-adl, the just. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that whatever must be punished, he will not leave unpunished. Nothing goes unseen, nothing goes unknown to him. And even if I don't see it in my lifetime, and we pray that it happens in our lifetimes, but if I don't see the justice in my lifetime, I know it's coming. And if it's not in this dunya, it's in the akhirah. This is the difference of a believer and a non-believer. Yes? That we know that there's an akhirah, there's a hisab, there's a judgment day coming. And for many people, that seems really far. However, it's coming.
Yes.
It's coming. And when I think about that, it kind of grounds me again. And I realize, Ya Rabbi, you have seen, you know what's happening. And sometimes you see these small signs, even in your life, even right now. And then sometimes you see things happening. Syria, nobody thought Syria would open up again. And as somebody who's spent a significant time of my life in Syria, the wow, right? And it was sort of this kind of a sign of like, even what seems like it could not change, changed. SubhanAllah. So we hope that more to come in terms of real healing for this ummah.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for having this conversation with us at Kindred. It's been wonderful, and I wanted to just maybe end by coming back to the work that you do in making it faith congruent psychiatry, and how I think one of the most interesting things that you mentioned over the last 1 hour was also how the Western tradition is more receptive now towards healing the soul as well as healing the mind. I just wanted to end by maybe asking, what does Islam and what does our tradition, what does it offer mental health and the world of mental health?
Yes, yeah. I'm very excited about this question because I believe fully, now that we've done, I consider the newest book on the one that was on the Maristans, the blueprint, and I say this as a psychiatrist, and I think my psychiatrist colleagues will agree with me, but it takes some honesty to agree with me that the current and modern mental health, psychiatric, psychological system is broken. It's a broken, fragmented system. It needs repair. And when I think about solutions, and my excitement around this passion project of mine about the Maristans, which I hope and pray, and I hope everyone that listens says Ameen. And I keep making this dua, Ya Rabbi, Allah, before you take me off this earth, please allow me to revive and rebuild the concept of the Maristan. Because it's a holistic healing system that allows you to heal inside and outside and inside, mind, body, soul. It has all aspects of healing. I believe it's actually the solution to the current crisis that we have in psychiatry and the broken, fragmented system that we see today, in which you fragment parts of you and only heal parts of you to the exclusion of the full, whole person. Yes? And for me, I believe that this is a solution, not just for the Muslims, but for humanity, for all people. There are universal teachings in Islam that are for everybody. Yes, the Muslims can benefit, absolutely. But if you look at the traditional Maristans, they were open for both the Muslims and the non-Muslims, both. Everyone and anyone who is in that land and that area. And when you think about what this can offer the current system coming forward, and I think my colleagues who are coming full circle now and realizing we need spirituality. We need to be able to bring in what they used to call alternative methods of healing. Now the terminology is called complementary medicine.
Yes.
Okay.
Not as dismissive.
Not as dismissive anymore. Let's bring in these complementary ways of healing. And, I was amazed when I was writing the book and I took my sabbatical to Turkey. I went there to look at the Maristans that are currently still standing. And, you have the physicians, the nurses, the pharmacologists, as we mentioned, dietitians, because food can be medicine or can harm or heal you, but also musicians. And people are always thinking, what on earth? They had a place for the orchestra and they would hire musicians the way they would hire physicians. And people thought this, so we wrote several papers in my lab about this, because I know as soon as Muslims hear this, they're going to go, no, music. And I say, hold on. This was a medicalized treatment, taking the science of the maqamat, the tones, and medicalizing it. A very anxious person, these tones calm them down. A very depressed person, these tones, when played, lift them up. They had harnessed this science even from a medical perspective. So you heal with sound, right? You heal with what you see, the greenery, the fountains, and the colors, the science of colors. You heal with aroma and smell. You heal with the cognition, the talk therapies. You heal with the physical, the hydrotherapies, the somatic therapies, body-based and water therapies. And when you bring all of these forms, not just alternative medicine, but you actually bring them all together into a healing center, that's what they called it. They didn't call it a hospital. They said Daru Shifa, the center of healing.
Yeah.
So this is my dream, my passion project, inshallah. I hope we find the partners and investors and funders and folks that will come forward, because we have the blueprints now. And if you ask me what is the solution to the modern psychiatric crisis and issues, I believe this is it, inshallah.
Dr. Rania, I hope all our listeners and viewers, and certainly I will be making dua that you succeed in this.
Thank you. Thank you.
That your dream of seeing the Maristan tradition, where mind, body, spirituality, soul is treated, becomes a reality. And you don't have to go back to the States. Just stay in Malaysia. We'll find the funding for you. Build your Maristan here.
One day I hope to as well, inshallah.
Thank you so much for being with us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.